Man, it's boiling hot out there. So, welcome back everyone. This is another video. Today I'm going to share my IELTS exam experience with you. My name is Tu. I have recently achieved an band 8.0 in IELTS, and that was my very first try.
I never made it, but I know what it takes. I'm motivated by a mix of emotion. Got my statement, and I'm reading it slow so I can understand it fully.
If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe, turn on the notification button, comment, like, share the video to your friends so none of you will miss another video about this topic. So, long story short, I am basically stuck in Vietnam right now, and this idea came at the very end of April. So I started to prepare exactly on the 1st of May, and my exam was on the 21st of May. That left me with, well, 20 days of preparation. I have to add that I had no idea before what IELTS was all about. So I knew that it's some kind of English testing method that most or lots of universities would accept around the world. But other than that, I had no clue. I didn't even know that 9.0 was the max. I always thought it's 10.0. So with that said, achieving an 8.0 on the first try after 20 days of preparation was a little bit of a surprise even for me, but preparation is another topic for another video. Now let's jump into it. So I took the exam at one of the IDP centers in Hanoi city, and to be honest, the way to find the examination room was a little bit tricky. If you have been there, comment below. You would know what's the situation. The first test was listening. Well, I think I did not struggle with listening too much. My score kind of speaks for itself. It's an 8.5, and I believe I could achieve a 9.0. I'm going to go for it next time. As usual, I felt like the test became harder and harder and more difficult towards the end, but it wasn't anything that was surprising to me. Then the second test, the second skill set that was tested on that day is probably my biggest enemy. That's writing. No, that's reading. Actually, during my school years, I've always rented out a cassette or a DVD to watch the film version of the mandatory readings. So towards the end of the reading test, I actually ran out of time. I had around less than 3 minutes remaining on the clock and 6 unanswered questions. So I left 4 of them blank. I failed 2. One of them was probably good and the other was a guess. So, well, with that 4 unanswered questions, it's quite understandable why my reading score is 7.0. And finally, the last skill that was tested on that day was writing. I actually never considered myself a good writer either, so a score of 7.5 is actually not bad in my opinion. The task 1 on that day was a bar chart. Well, I usually need more than 20 minutes to finish the part 1, and in this case it took a little bit too long. It was around 25 minutes in which I wrote around 192 words, if my memory serves me well. Fortunately, the second task was done within 33 minutes. I wrote 338 words. Quite a lot, guys. So do not fall into that trap, okay? Write something like 290, maximum 300. So that left me with around 2 to 3 minutes to correct my writing. I quickly jumped back to the first task. I tried to rephrase and adjust my sentences a little bit so they would score higher, but probably I did more damage than good. So I had actually ran out of time while writing a word. So I was in the middle. It was quite a long word. I had to stop there. So I have a half word in my essay. I firmly believe that without those mistakes, I could have done an 8.0 in writing. But well, we'll try it next time. So just a little note, my listening, reading and writing exam was on a separate day, and my speaking exam or speaking test was on the next day. So another day, another exam. Speaking. I woke up preparing for speaking just a little bit to get in the mood. I was listening to some English music, some rap. I caught a grab that took me to IDP. I arrived around 1 hour earlier before my exam. Since I have a lot of time on my hand, I decided to enjoy a Vietnamese coffee on empty stomach. Well, until this day, I'm not entirely convinced it was a good idea. I remember having a caffeine rush around 30 minutes after the Vietnamese coffee with condensed milk. And I basically chugged up around 6 to 7 cups of water in the IDP office. So yeah, man, Vietnamese coffee is so strong for no reason. So after 20 minutes of waiting in the lobby of the IDP center, the examiner came out. He greeted me. He asked me if I was ready. I said, of course I am. Soon after that, we entered this examination room, which was surprisingly tiny. So it was around 1.8 meters in width and around 3 meters in depth. It was so small, really, but it still had its own AC unit, which was a little bit of a shock to me, to be honest. So for those who were asking about the conditions of the examination room, I can tell you that it's air conditioned, it has its own AC unit, and in fact it was a little bit chilly for me. Next, the examiner read his part, the time, the day, the date, the month, the year, the location, the candidate's number, the examiner's number. After this procedure began the part where you could actually talk. Firstly, he asked my name, and then he asked for my ID or passport to verify that. My first question was, do you study or work at the moment? And then he continued asking about my work. He asked, what is the most interesting thing about my work, my job? Then the second topic of the part 1 of speaking exam was about parks. He asked me, do people go to parks where you live? I answered that question, and then he said, do you often go to parks yourself? And then after that he asked about conditions of a public park in the area where I live, and what are the benefits of visiting these places. In addition, there were 2 other questions about a completely different topic that I can't really remember right now. My memory is a little bit hazy. After this came the part 2 of the speaking exam, everyone's favorite, where you're given a topic card, a pen and a paper, and you have 1 minute to prepare your notes. After that, you have to speak for 2 minutes fluently. My topic was, describe a job that you would not like to do. I described an office job. It's kind of my nightmare, so I spoke quite fluently about it. But I had a little pause towards the end, and I believe that that's like 4 to 5 second pause there caused me half a point. In the last part, the part 3 of the speaking exam, I had more questions related to work. And then they asked me about the habits of successful people, what makes a person successful or even super successful. I answered them quite well, and then they asked me about the right kind of upbringing of children to become a successful, financially successful person. So I think my third part was quite a success as well. And that's it. that's the end of my speaking exam and my IELTS exam overall. I spent around 14 minutes in that room, and it felt like 10, so the extra 4 minutes was, I don't know, fast forwarded, or I don't know, it just it flew by so fast, it blew my mind. Oh, and by the way, my examiner was really experienced, and I bet he has been living in Vietnam for quite a few years now. He could pronounce my Vietnamese name with the accent marks. He was rather enthusiastic, in my opinion. He tried to rephrase the questions to make them a little bit more clear. That was a very nice gesture from him. It usually gives the candidate a little bit more time to think about the topic and organize their thoughts. Well, on the other hand, I think that this also limits their ability to talk about basically everything. So you have to be a little bit more specific if the examiner requires you to do so. Still, since the topics and the questions are usually so vague, you will always have something to talk about. Well, this is all I remember from my IELTS exam. My memory is a little bit hazy by now, as I have mentioned earlier. If you have not seen my IELTS certificate unboxing video, you will find the links down there in the description. I hope you have learned something today, and by the time your actual exam comes up, you won't be faced with many problems or difficulties anymore. Once again, don't forget to subscribe, turn on the notification button, like this video, ask me anything in the comments, share the video to your friends so none of you will miss another upcoming video about these topics. I wish you a successful preparation, and remember, IELTS is just one part of the journey to master English. Well, this is the end of the video. Take care. I'll see you in the next one.
I never made it, but I know what it takes. I'm motivated by a mix of emotion. Got my statement, and I'm reading it slow so I can